Right. Well, welcome to today's workshop, Understand the Nonprofit Sector in Central Illinois, brought to you in partnership with the Community Foundation of East Central Illinois. Before I introduce our speakers, I would like to go over some housekeeping. If you have questions about today's workshop, you can email us at librarian@champaign.org. For those not familiar, I'd like to briefly go over some of the Zoom features that are available to you. Starting at the bottom left of your screen, you can adjust your audio settings like changing your speaker. Moving to the center bottom of your screen, you will see a chat and raise hand option. Clicking on the chat will open or close a chat box on the right side of your Zoom window. And we invite you all to chat or type in chat as needed, but please make sure you're either sending a chat to the presenters, like a question, or you can send a chat to everyone in the group. The chat is a great tool to ask questions or leave comments for the presenter or for myself. If you ask a question in the chat, we can get to that towards the end when we have a question and answer session. You also have the option to raise your hand. That will get you more assistance from the webinar host, me, and also a way to share a question at the end as well if you'd like to verbalize your question. If you have any technical difficulties, please let me know in the chat or by raising your hand. And without further delay, I would like to go ahead and introduce both Genevieve Kirk, the Director of the Center for Nonprofit Excellence at the Community Foundation of East Central Illinois, and Dr. Melissa Iverson. So take it away, Genevieve.
Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining us today. This is our first board boot camp session of the year. My name is Genevieve Kirk. I'm the Center for Nonprofit Excellence Director at the Community Foundation of East Central Illinois. And I would just like to thank the Champaign Public Library for hosting today's webinar for us and helping us promote it. Also, I would like to thank Dr. Melissa Iverson from the School of Social Work at the University of Illinois for co-presenting today's session. We know that many of you here today are board members or staff at local nonprofit organizations, or perhaps you're a community member interested in growing your knowledge about nonprofits. We welcome you here today. When we bring new board members into our organizations, we realize that not everyone is fully aware of what a nonprofit is and how they operate, how public charities are different from private foundations. What do we mean by 501c3 and so on? So today our goal is to provide you with a basic understanding of the nonprofit sector. You can think of that as a nonprofit 101. And in addition, we want to use our time here together today to share some specific insights about the nonprofit sector size, health, and evolution of our industry, specifically in the area that the Community Foundation serves, East Central Illinois. Our hope is that this information and data will help you as board members to better understand and navigate the complex nonprofit landscape in our local community, and hopefully to use this information to make decisions that guide and strengthen your organizations. So with that, we wanted to get a better sense of who is in our audience today. So Maura, would you be able to launch that first poll? Okay, you'll see a few selections here. If you could just check the box that best describes your role: nonprofit board member, executive director, staff member, community member, or other, you're welcome to share that in the chat. We'll keep this open for just a couple more seconds. Does it look like most people have had a chance to fill it out, Maura?
Yes, we got 90%, so yes.
Okay, great. Are we able to share back that result?
Here we go.
Okay, great. So we have a nice mix here in the audience today, mostly board members and executive directors. Thank you. That helps us to know who is here in the audience. We appreciate you taking the time to fill that out. Okay, well, Maura covered most of our housekeeping, so I'm going to just skip right by this, but also just to let you know that this session is being recorded for the benefit of individuals who are not able to attend our live Zoom webinar today. Just a quick overview. This is the order we're going to go in. I will quickly introduce myself and Dr. Iverson. Dr. Iverson will be sharing information about nonprofits. I will then share with you an overview of the nonprofit sector in East Central Illinois. This is a report that was compiled for us last fall by Geese College of Business students at University of Illinois. And then I'll present some points of application that you as board members and executive directors can take from this data. Finally, I know that you'll probably have some questions that we can help answer towards the end of our time today. So we'll take most of those questions at the end of the content that we'll be sharing for you. So that is our agenda for the next hour. We'll wrap up before 1 p.m. So just a quick word of introduction. I'll start about me. I am the Center for Nonprofit Excellence Director. I joined the staff of the Community Foundation in 2021. I really enjoy strengthening our local nonprofit sector through training, resources, and capacity building efforts. I've worked in a variety of leadership roles in nonprofit organizations in the United States and also internationally over the last 20 years. Prior to joining the staff of the Community Foundation, I was the executive director of the Champaign Center Partnership, which is a 501c6 nonprofit business association serving Champaign's downtown, midtown, and campus town districts. I have a bachelor's degree from the University of Chicago, and I earned my master's in public service with a focus on nonprofit management from Marquette University. I've also been an adjunct instructor in the School of Social Work at the University of Illinois, teaching nonprofit sector and society and social entrepreneurship and social change. I've lived here in Champaign since 2014, and I think we have a really great community. So I'm excited to be here in this role that supports our social service sector and also to help nonprofits do their good work even better. I'm going to introduce Dr. Iverson, and then I will pass it over to her. So Dr. Melissa Iverson teaches in the Leadership and Social Change Master of Social Work concentration in the School of Social Work at the University of Illinois. In her role as an educator, she focuses on connecting classroom theory and learning to current social issues students see at their internships and in human service organization domain. Dr. Iverson holds a BA in psychology from Winona State, master's in gender studies and MSW from Loyola University Chicago, and a PhD in social work from Loyola University Chicago. She joined the faculty of the School of Social Work at the University of Illinois in 2021 as teaching assistant professor. And we are so thrilled that she is part of our community and a thought leader in the nonprofit domain. She has a busy teaching schedule today, and so I'm just so thankful that she's here joining us today. Welcome, Dr. Iverson. Thank you for being here. I will pass things over to you.
Thank you, Genevieve. I see we got a Rambler in the house, so that's go Ramblers. So I feel like I got to be careful where I say that. So, but thank you. I want to thank the foundation also for inviting me. As Genevieve mentioned, I'm new to the community, and the foundation has not only just been an incredible resource, but for learning about all the nonprofits and everything that's happening here. But they do so much in terms of our student support as well, and really helping our students who want to be future leaders of nonprofits to learn about the realities of the work. So, Angie often guest speaks in my class, and we mentioned it. So I'm really glad to be here today. I'm going to focus a little bit on background, and please feel free to utilize the chat as we go. I'll try to monitor it, but I know also that we have folks monitoring it in case anything pops up. Genevieve, I'll have you click over to the first slide. Thank you. All right, so it sounds like a lot of folks are in the nonprofit world in some capacity, serving on boards, leadership, or staff. But I think what a lot of people often don't recognize is how incredibly diverse the sector is, and how many services we provide to society and the public benefit around it. When we're talking about nonprofits in particular, we're really referring to not one thing that they do, but we're capturing we're capturing sort of the service that happens. And what I really love, I always tell social work students this, is like we kind of have the biggest umbrella of professionalism. You can work with youth and children for part of your career, and then you can work with seniors for part of your career, and everything in between in terms of after school programming, sports, mental health. I mean, we run the gamut. But one thing that makes us in particular unique and not this and different from for-profit organizations is that we do not distribute any profits in a way that benefits individuals or stakeholders. And we use any profits to enhance the organization, we're not looking to increase anyone's wealth or enterprising value through that work. We'll talk about myths in a minute, but one of the big ones is that nonprofits can't or shouldn't turn over a profit, which is a bit of a misnomer, and we'll talk a little bit about that. But really, when we're talking about nonprofits, we're talking about folks that provide either a service, that provide a resource, or that provide some other type of like social benefit. So, like a support group, like that. And we're really focusing, the one thing that brings us sort of all together is that we have this really strong commitment to improving the overall circumstances, quality of life, et cetera, for the clients in the community that we serve. And we're also really tied closely to the people that support us. So whether that's individual donors or foundations, volunteers, our clients, or the community at large, we're really connected and tied into making sure we're meeting those needs, making sure we're picking up on shifts and needs, that type of thing. I'll have you switch over, Genevieve. So as I mentioned, there's a lot of common misperceptions. As someone who teaches in social work, the number one question I get is, can you work in nonprofits if you're not a social worker? And the answer is yes. Lots of people work in social work or in nonprofits from all kinds of backgrounds. But I want to hit any common misperceptions or myths. And if folks actually have any or questions about them, please throw them in the chat, and I can spend a little time talking about that as well. But some of the big ones that come up when we're thinking about nonprofits is that they should not or cannot earn a profit. And agencies can make a profit, and they actually should. I think in the last couple of years, we've seen why. For a lot of organizations, just like any other business, they need savings, they need rainy day funds, they need investment growth, they need to invest in things like updating technology and that kind of thing. And really focusing on investment also can help guide and support the mission-driven work of the organization. So a lot of times folks think, all the money should go directly toward clients immediately, but we also want to be thinking about sustainability and support around nonprofits in terms of their financial circumstances. The other one that pops up a lot is that we shouldn't spend a lot of our nonprofit money on overhead. So what I mean by that essentially is when folks donate or when people think about foundations, they want to know what their money did, and they would really love it to go directly towards the clients. And what can happen that way is that things like rent and lights and overhead can not get a lot of money directed towards it. And so we really want to be mindful of the same mentality of you have to invest money to make money type of thing. But we see that a lot in nonprofits. And I think sometimes some of the ways that can manifest is a nonprofit got a really good and strong budget, but they can't reallocate their money across programs because they're specifically tied to certain things. And so then it can make it tight for some of those overhead expenses. But, and I think the number one thing and maybe the folks here that are nonprofit leaders will say is the big one is technology. We see like folks are like, oh, like that's overhead. And in reality, when we're updating our tech on a regular basis, we're, being more productive as providers, we're increasing services to clients. We're maximizing our resources. That's in that kind of stuff. So, a lot of folks think that nonprofits can't be political or they can't lobby, in particular 501c3s, which, are we getting into that today, Genevieve? I can't remember.
You can touch on it if you'd
Okay.
like. But...
All right. So there's a number of different types of nonprofits. The most common is a 501c3, which is an organization that holds a specific tax status. And one of the things that comes with that tax status, so like if you all donated somewhere, you get a tax letter in the mail that says it's a tax deductible donation. That's probably the best way. Most folks know that experience. But a lot of folks think that those organizations can't lobby or be political. And while there are limitations and there are guidelines and restrictions, there's regulations, we can in fact do some of this work. So, for example, we can't endorse a political candidate. And I have a good example of that. I worked for a nonprofit, and one of our former employees ran for an alderman position in Chicago, and we ran into her at an event, not a fundraiser for her or anything, but at an event, and we took a picture and we threw it up on our social media. And one of our funders gently pointed out that we were in violation of doing that. We weren't supporting her necessarily as a political opponent. We weren't saying go out and vote, but we had to be mindful of that. But however, we can do policy and advocacy work. We can organize our clients to go and talk to a representative. We can help clients understand a policy. We can help clients, figure out where to register to vote and things like that. So there are a lot of parameters for that, and I would highly recommend knowing very clearly what they are. But for a lot of nonprofits, we don't see this wing. And I think some of the reason is because of that, but also we don't end up sometimes allocating money towards some of that because we're focusing on direct service. And those are sort of like the money logistical misconceptions. I think some of the other areas that we see with nonprofits, and I know I've experienced in my life, is that we're well-intentioned helpers. I think is sometimes what we feel, and we are in a lot of ways. But the reality is the nonprofit world is made up of folks who are trained professionals. I mean, social workers have to have a minimum of an undergrad, a master's degree, 2 years of supervision, and a licensure to run clinical social work. So we do care a lot, but we also are trained professionals working with other trained professionals in different areas. And we also function across the board. We have folks who are volunteers, and we have folks who were former clients. So it really runs the gamut. But I think when we think about this, sometimes folks think that it's people who are maybe just donating of their time. And while that is a lot of folks that do contribute to it, the majority of folks in nonprofits do have an advanced degree and are mixed with a nice combination of folks who have also lived experiences in these areas. And then the last one is that good intentions equals quality care. This one, doesn't get talked about all the time, or maybe enough, but it's there. We want to help, we want to make an impact. And I think the thing we have to think about is being mindful that we're not the only people that know what's best. Or that maybe our belief systems or our background might be different than both the folks running the organization and the clients that we serve. Really, in so many ways, it is such an immense privilege to work with our clients at this very specific point in their lives when they need additional support. And, working from that place, really focusing on the fact that the clients are the experts in their lives, and our good intentions have to be vetted and backed with really quality care. And we have to learn to support and collaborate with them, not provide services for them. And really thinking about some of that stuff. And sometimes when folks aren't familiar, one of the things that happens is they think we're sort of in the business of listening or lending an ear, or helping or saving people. And really what we're doing is we're meeting people where they're at with support and empathy to champion the change that they're leaning forward in this point in their lives. So next slide, please. All right. So who are we as a nonprofit industry? I always am surprised when I see these stats. The size and scope of our sector is really large. 1.8 million organizations in the US, and that does not include smaller nonprofits that don't have a tax status or don't have that piece. And also not all religious organizations have that status. So it's actually probably a significant, there's another group of people that are in there. We are the third largest workforce sector. We employ over 13 million people, which is 10% of the workforce. So it's a pretty significant chunk. And so for comparison, because I find that that's helpful, the amount of people that we employ is twice as many people as jobs as for people that work in transportation and the finance industries, or it is 30% more than folks that work in retail and 60% more than people that work in the construction industry. So it's a pretty substantial amount of folks that we're talking about when we're talking about those. So, and the nonprofit sector has a really substantial economic impact as well. So, next slide, please. All right, so some basic board governance. For folks that are serving on boards, thank you for your service and your work and your time that you're committing to these local organizations and supporting your executive directors. So for nonprofits, we are required to have a board of directors, and it is like executive leadership in a lot of ways. We are sort of the big picture for the organization. So our executive leader, right, our executive director, our HR folks, frontline folks, they're the day-to-day folks that are doing some of this work. But the board in particular is a role of service support and oversight. So really thinking about ensuring that the organization is fulfilling its mission. And like, what does that mean? That's a really big and vague thing. So for example, I work with an organization that had housing in their name, but the agency need and the community need was shifting away from that. People weren't needing housing support anymore. And so the board thought, we want to meet this need, but this is both a mission, vision, and potentially marketing / name change thing. And so they helped facilitate the process of the direction of the agency, gathering data, and helping some of that. So a more hands-on approach for that, but also really ensuring, that services are getting updates about how services are being rolled out and ensuring that's within the mission. All right, I'll have you click to the slide, please. All right, so there's three big pieces when we're talking about boards, and it's a big responsibility, right? We're focusing on the welfare of an agency as a whole, but there's three areas: duty of care, so really focusing on attention and due diligence to the organization's finances and management, which is actually really why I love board boot camp that y'all do, because I know that that's a piece of this puzzle. And trying to teach board members about reading 990s and taxes and all that kind of stuff can be hard. So it's great that you have the opportunity to engage in some of that stuff. Duty of loyalty, so ensuring that you're putting the organization's interests above your own. And, like we talked about, it's not enhancing your own business or your own finances or anybody else, I guess, that works for the organization as well. And then duty of obedience, we're really talking about compliance with law, ensuring that bylaws are up to date and utilized correctly. Any decisions that governing documents, and then any other decisions that are consistent with the mission. So another example of this is working with an organization right now, and they're growing, and they don't have an operations manual. And so one of the things the board is supporting with is ensuring that they're in compliance with the laws for some of those documents that need to be put into place as they move sort of from a volunteer organization into a paid staff organization. So, so those are some of the big picture things. I think a lot of the other things that can come under boards, approving the annual budget is a big one, right? But also friend networking and community networking and building connections. So often we see board members out that have learned about other organizations, and it's like, oh, how are we not referring out for services, or how are we not supporting one another in these ways as well. So we see some of that. And then often for a number of organizations, there is a personal financial gift or contribution as well. So really, and that varies so much depending on where you're at, but really focusing on what type of contribution supports the organization on a personal level as well. And then we have a lot of board folks that bring their experience. For example, I was a grant writer for a long time, and so when I first started serving on boards, that was the big one. We need someone who understands grant writing. So I filled that role while folks were learning that skill set, or while they were building that position out, that type of thing. Public accountants have their own like online platform where they can be linked to nonprofits, which is cool. So really looking at bringing in your expertise as well. So, and we have a lot of folks who are in community, have the food services, you know, that know really the heart and the pulse of the community, and can really bring them up. I believe that is the end of my time.
Thank you, Dr. Iverson. There's one question in the Q&A. Was there a court case that these duties, so duty of care, loyalty, and obedience, were listed in? What's the history of these?
Oh, I don't know the history. They're in all the textbooks. I mean, I think in a lot of ways that does come out of, I mean, and this is just my opinion. I don't know if there's a court case that it comes out of, but in a lot of ways, when we were shifting to figuring out nonprofits from a for-profit model, we were talking about things like how do we ensure oversight, how do we ensure ethical and supportive practices, and I think a lot of that came out of those things. Also, you know, I think nonprofits are monitored and regulated really closely in terms of their finances and their oversight, and so one of a really good way to do that is through board work. So if anybody else has got anything else on that.
Thank you. And from the same individual, she's asking, what is you reference nonprofit board accountant finder?
Yeah.
What is that?
You're gonna bust me out. There's like a certified public accountants, and they can join, like they have licensure and membership, and they can join, and that's like and I have not been in the nonprofit working world for the past 6 years, but where you can register your organization and find a match. So you know, when I worked in Chicago, we needed our budget grew substantially, and we needed a better sense and handle on our audit. So we asked for a public accountant, and we found a match, and then they served for 3 years, which helped us get ready for the changes that were happening to our audit. But I don't know the URL off the top of my head. I'm really sorry.
No problem. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you being here, Dr. Iverson, and I wanted to let folks on the webinar know that she has a jam-packed teaching schedule and has to jump off of this webinar to get back to teaching at the U of I. But would you join me in giving her a virtual thank you for sharing her time and expertise with us today? Thank you, Dr. Iverson.
Yes, and I think my contact information is available at the end. So if folks want to connect, I'm happy to have a conversation with you. All right, but yes, I taught till noon, and I teach again in like 10 minutes. So it was a pleasure, and again, thanks to everybody for all the work that you're doing to support the local organization. Take care and have a good day.
Thank you so much. Well, for this next part of the boot camp, I'm going to be sharing some data points with you all on the size, health, and evolution of the nonprofit sector in East Central Illinois, our 9-county service area. First, I want to just express my gratitude. We worked with a really awesome student team from the Geese College of Business Action Learning class, which is through the Office of Experiential Learning, that helped our organization last semester with this project. And our goal in working with this team was to just better understand ourselves, the nonprofit sector, and landscape in our service area, and then to use this information to further assess the needs of nonprofits in our area so that we can be responsive in the programming and services that we do through the Community Foundation Center for Nonprofit Excellence. So with that, Maura is going to launch just another poll here for us to take a stab at. So this is sort of a knowledge check. You can just take a wild guess. How many nonprofits do you think are in East Central Illinois? So we've got a few options for you here. Just take a guess, and we'll keep that open for a minute or so, and then I will share back what we learned from the student project.
All right, I think we got most people answering. I'll give it a few moments longer in case people want to take a guess. All right, I'll go ahead and end it. And would you like me to share the results?
Sure, that'd be
Okay.
great. Okay, some good guesses. Well, I'm glad no one guessed 52. That would be pretty low. Okay, so that's good. You think many have different guesses on this. So let me tell you what we learned. So the answer, it was the last option. So 2,053, and this is just 501c3 nonprofits in East Central Illinois. So you'll see here, this little map is when I mention East Central Illinois, it's these 9 counties: Iroquois, Ford, Champaign, Vermilion, Piatt, Moultrie, Douglas, Edgar, and Coles counties. So of these 2,000 plus organizations, 92% are what we call public charities. So these are nonprofits that are funded by a variety of different sources, and they tend to provide direct services to the public. So under IRS rules, the purpose of these organizations will be charitable, religious, educational, scientific, literary, testing for public safety, fostering national or international amateur sports competitions, and for the prevention of cruelty to children or animals. So the other 159 organizations, or that's 8% of this group, are what we call private foundations. So these are funded by an individual, family, or other donors. Just note that these are also 501c3 tax-exempt organizations, but unlike public charities, they generally are not providing those direct services themselves, nor do they raise funds or seek financial support from the public. So they will be funding other organizations to carry out these program activities. You can see on this slide, there's a count of public charities by county. So Champaign County, as you would probably expect in our service area, we have the most nonprofits in East Central Illinois with 879 501c3s. And by the way, if you're wondering, where did this data come from? It's from IRS Form 990s, which is the annual information return that 501c3 organizations fill out each year for the IRS. So there you go. That sounds like a lot of nonprofits, huh? In terms of growth that we see over time, we wanted to track what growth are we seeing in the nonprofit sector over time. And you can see that even though we've had some recent economic downturns, the number of nonprofit public charities in East Central Illinois has grown over the past 10 years by about 22%. And this is mirroring growth in the nonprofit sector that we've seen on a national level. In fact, there's been exponential growth of the nonprofit sector, public charities, and private foundations over the past century. I found a recent New Yorker article that stated for every foundation that existed in 1930, there are now 500. The growth in foundation assets in that time has been even more staggering, from less than $1 billion, this was in 1930, to more than $800 billion today. So that is some pretty huge growth, and just good to know on a local level that our nonprofit sector is growing too, based on these information returns. So what are all these nonprofits in our area doing? Well, this pie chart represents different subsectors that nonprofits in our area are working on. So biggest wedge of the pie here is human service organizations, followed by religion-related organizations. The smallest wedge of the pie is those organizations that work on international or foreign affairs, with just 1% of the total count. So I find it helpful to see some examples of what other organizations, like the names of organizations that are working in these different areas. So assuming you're from our community, you'll probably see and recognize many familiar names on this list. Examples of human service organizations. So again, that's the biggest chunk of the pie, would be places like Eastern Illinois Food Bank and Clark Lindsay Village. Religion-related organizations are many churches, temples, and mosques, such as Sinai Temple and CU Christian Church. And then health nonprofits include a lot of our major medical institutions, which are nonprofits as well, like Carle Hospital and Kirby Medical Center. So next, we asked our student team to look at the economics of nonprofits in East Central Illinois. So the total annual revenue of nonprofits in our service area is $3.5 billion. Sounds like a lot of money, right? However, when you look at this first chart, so the revenue range of nonprofits within our service area, you'll see that most nonprofits in our area, 65%, are really small organizations operating with $25,000 or less. So this tells me that probably they're all volunteer-led, and or maybe they have a part-time executive director if that's their annual revenue size. Much of the sector's revenue is generated by a very small percentage of organizations. In fact, you'll see in that first chart, there are 24 nonprofits in East Central Illinois that bring in $10 million or more in revenue each year. Many of these are healthcare nonprofits. And then in the second chart, you'll see that health organizations comprise about 75% of nonprofit revenue, total revenue, but they're making up only 5% of the total count of nonprofits. So that's a lot more information than I had before we undertook this this project, which I think has some different insights we can draw from it. If you want to know who are the biggest players, the biggest organizations in terms of revenue, well, here's a list for you of the top 20 in our region. You'll notice that the majority of these are indeed healthcare nonprofits. You'll also see some of the bigger human service organizations and educational organizations here. Names you'll probably recognize: Eastern Illinois Food Bank, Cunningham Children's Home, and maybe some lesser known organizations, but Carle Foundation Hospital and Carle Foundation are at the top of this list. And just if you want to total it, these 20 organizations comprise 82% of our total service area revenue. So just in 20 organizations alone. So finally, to broaden our perspective of the landscape of nonprofits in Champaign-Urbana, we asked our student team to compare our nonprofit count in Champaign-Urbana to other Midwest university towns. And here's what we found. While the number of nonprofits in our area, we're always hearing, oh, there's so many nonprofits. And yes, that is true, but compared to other university towns, our number of nonprofits per capita is actually low. We have less nonprofits per capita than Madison, Wisconsin, than Columbus, Ohio, and than Ann Arbor, Michigan. Our nonprofit per capita count is only slightly higher than Bloomington, Indiana. The composition of nonprofits in our area, as you'll see in the chart there, is actually very similar to these other communities in terms of subsectors. So this is just a snapshot of some of these high-level findings that we learned about nonprofits in East Central Illinois. Again, my sincere gratitude to the student team from Geese College of Business for doing this research for us and for compiling this report that you'll see here. We will be sharing a link to the full report with you in a follow-up email after we conclude our session today, so that you can kind of go in deeper if you want to do a bit more reading about this. But what have you learned from this, or what did we learn? Well, I've got a few points of application that I would suggest. These are my own kind of personal suggestions for you as board members and executive directors. Some insights you can apply to your own organizations. First, Know that East Central Illinois is home to a substantial and growing nonprofit community. And I think we should be really, really proud of the work that our local organizations are doing to address community needs and challenges. Your work as board members, as staff, it is so important and integral to our sector. So thank you, first and foremost. Second, I believe there is still room for social innovation in our community. While it seems like we have a lot of nonprofits, we learned that our per capita count is actually lower than other Midwest university towns. I believe we can be supportive of new and emerging organizations that are forming to address community challenges in a new, unique, or different way. And third, it floored me that 65% of nonprofits in our area are operating with such small revenues, under $25,000 a year. We learned in a nonprofit needs assessment last year that the biggest challenge expressed by nonprofits that responded to our survey was fundraising. Nonprofits need help raising funds. As board members, one of your key duties, excuse me for a sec. As board members, one of your key duties is to ensure that your organizations have adequate resources to carry out your missions. This is something that we should pay attention to and support. And last, nonprofits need more of you, board members, more dedicated community members to step up and serve on boards of directors. We need board members who understand their roles and responsibilities, who can help with governance, oversight, and building organizational capacity. So consider this a rally call to talk more in your circles of influence with other individuals about our great nonprofit community and the need to get more people engaged in this community. Because ultimately, it's about responding to human needs and challenges and lifting our community up. So with that word of motivation and maybe a little inspiration, I just wanted to share with you our 2023 training calendar at the Center for Nonprofit Excellence, which is an initiative of the Community Foundation of East Central Illinois. We offer a number of trainings. We have peer circles and workshops for nonprofit executive directors, board members, new nonprofit leaders who are just getting started. One new series that we're offering this year is called Foundational Fundraising, which responds to the need of nonprofits for more fundraising training. We'll have a virtual panel discussion on capital campaigns through the Champaign Public Library in April. And then we'll be running 2 trainings on building endowments this fall. So mark your calendars for those. For board development, we have a panel discussion coming up in March called So You Want to Join a Nonprofit Board. That'll be held at Champaign Public Library. And then later in early fall, we'll have a board match expo to help connect nonprofits and the community physically. So to help you fill volunteer spots at your organizations and board openings. You can find more information about all of these programs and links to register through our website, which is CFECI.org. We also have a private Facebook group you can look for called Center for Nonprofit Excellence. You're welcome to join that group. Just submit a request to join and an admin will approve you to stay in the loop, post questions, and share resources. So with that, I think we're in our time of question and answers, and I have not been monitoring the chat or the Q&A. So if Maura or Angie would like to queue up any of those, we can get started answering as many of your questions as possible.
Yeah, I don't think we've seen anything come through yet. People are more than welcome to, or you can raise your hand if you'd like me to allow you to talk as well on Zoom. All right, we have one from Miriam. Here we go, Miriam.
Hi, can you hear me?
Yeah.
My name is Miriam. I'm the executive director at the Independent Media Center, and just wanted to say I really appreciate this, the resources that were shared today. I was curious about, I'm curious to look over the report and take a look at it. I also wondered if, just sort of a quick question, if the 990s, there's a nonprofit tool through the ProPublica website, I think. And so I wondered if y'all use that or GuideStar, or sort of how you access those 990s for crunching that data.
Sure, I can answer that. I personally use GuideStar. For those who aren't familiar with it, it's guidestar.org. And that's a great place where with a free login, you can get in and pull up 990s for basically any organization in the United States for the last 3 years. For the purpose of this, Miriam, though, the students access the data sets through the IRS directly. And there's a link where you can go in and download your data based on whatever region you're searching for. So for us, we did the 9-county area based off of zip codes. And then with that data set, we kind of pulled it out, and I had 2 graduate students first crunch the numbers, and this undergraduate team who wrote up the report and PowerPoint slides for us.
Super, thanks so much.
Sure.
All right, we have one from Michelle. Here we go, Michelle.
Hi, everyone. My name is Michelle Gonzalez. I work in public engagement at the University of Illinois, and I also happen to serve on the board at Community Foundation. So hi, Genevieve.
Hi, Michelle.
So I often get approached by members of the community about volunteer ideas. And I want to encourage people to join boards because I know there's a big need. And I give them the ideas of boards that I know about and, what's within my network. But do you have any suggestions besides, just the Community Foundation, of other places where they can look? What can I say?
Specific for board openings?
Correct.
Well, I'm so glad you asked this question, Michelle, because both the Community Foundation as well as the United Way of Champaign County, we both keep track of organizations that are requesting current board openings. And at our next boot camp, which I believe you'll be a panelist at on March 30th, we're going to have a handout that will kind of combine forces from both of these entities with all of our currently open board positions that we know of in the community. So there will be at least probably 15 to 20 organizations on that list that need board members right now.
So that's between the foundation and the United
Way, yes.
But there's probably, when you told me that there's 2,000 nonprofits in East Central Illinois, I would imagine that there's even more.
Yes, and probably a lot of these organizations aren't yet even aware that they can let us know about their open board positions so that we can get the word out for them. So this research that we did, I think, is really just laying the landscape of that we can be doing even more to connect with some of these smaller organizations and support them as well. But for any organizations that are listening in right now, we have a board match form that I'll promote at our March 30th session, where you can let us know that you have open board positions by just filling out this form. Then we'll plug you into our little list. And as we hear from community members that want to serve on a board, that's a way for us to connect you with them. And I'll make sure that you get those links to follow up on board match forms if any organizations here are looking to fill your open board positions.
Thank you.
Sure, thank you. Any other questions?
Oh, there we go. Yeah, go ahead, Miriam.
Sorry to take up space, but if no one else has questions, so at the IMC, we got a grant last year to start a nonprofit incubator that focuses on minority-led nonprofits. And so I've been meaning to reach out to y'all and appreciate everything that the foundation is doing in filling that gap in sort of just supporting new nonprofits as well. I did wonder, one of the things that we were sort of tasked with was to support folks with some of the GATA compliance and state funding. I thought I would just ask if there are resources available for supporting people with some of the paperwork and processes that go along with state grants?
That is a good question. I might ask Angie if she wants to kind of chime in on that. I can tell you through our Community Solutions Incubator, which is our initiative through the Center for Nonprofit Excellence. We're working with 9 founders this year in a cohort model of new and emerging nonprofit organizations. We provide more training, resources, and mentoring, not as much like compliance with state grants. But Angie, do you have any suggestions on that one?
Yeah, Miriam, I can follow up with you. I think there are several accounting firms that would offer this type of support. I don't know that any of them are doing it for free, but I do know of a couple of organizations, one of whom graduated from our incubator, who's enlisted the help of a local firm that's kind of helped them navigate what can be a very complicated process. So.
Super. Yeah, I'd appreciate suggestions. I think we have worked with pretty hands-on in our incubator, and I think that's been one of the biggest challenge areas, is that we understand that there are funds for state grants, but especially those small nonprofits, like the data was showing, really struggle with the capacity needed to receive those grants, even if they're doing really important community work. So we've tried to be a little bit of a matchmaker and the incubator program that we have is quite hands-on, but I'm glad to learn about some more resources that I think, that our groups could take advantage of with you all. And I'd love to connect and find out, who you've worked with in terms of accountants, Angie. So yeah, thanks so much.
And Miriam, I'll also let you know, we would love it sounds like you've got some great ideas and thoughts that other executive directors in our community could benefit from. We have this executive director leadership network. If you're interested in joining the listserv for that, I send out meeting reminders once a month. We meet on the second Thursday of the month from 12 to 1 p.m. Zoom, and then once a quarter in person. We'd love to have you join and connect, and we share resources. You can just email me for that. It's Genevieve@CFECI.org if you're interested, or for any other executive directors listening in today. How are we doing on questions? Anything else?
I've not seen anything come through yet.
Well, I'll pause just a moment longer, but if there are not other questions, I will go ahead and wrap us up and say thank you for joining our board boot camp session today. Our next session will be held, that's the one I mentioned to Michelle, on Thursday, March the 30th. It'll be in person, 5:30 to 6:30 p.m. at Champaign Public Library. This is the panel discussion, so you want to join a nonprofit board with 3 local leaders who are active on nonprofit boards. And again, we'll be promoting those open board opportunities then, and the board match process that we have. Reminder to check out our website, keep posted on upcoming trainings, workshops to support your organizations. And just thanks for your time, and you'll get a link to the full report that we referenced today following this webinar.
Awesome. Yeah, well, thank you, Genevieve. Thank you to Angie and to Dr. Iverson for joining as well. If anyone has any additional questions, you can send us an email at librarian@champaign.org or give us a call. We're at 217-403-2000. Before we go, I would like to invite you to our next webinar, which is Social Media 101 on February 21st. You can find more info about that on champaign.org/events, and also see all the events that are coming up with Genevieve as well. Genevieve, thanks for bringing this wonderful workshop to our community, and I hope everyone has a great rest of your day.
Thank you.
All right. Bye, everyone.